Welcome to Statute Stories. If you're looking to understand the law in a fun and engaging way, then you are at the right place. In this video, we will discuss sections 54 to 65 of the Pakistan Penal Code, PPC, and Indian Penal Code, IPC. So let's start. Section 54, Commutation of Death Sentences. Kind government for death prisoners. When someone is given a death sentence for a serious crime, the government might decide to change that punishment to some lesser punishment without the consent of the offender. This is called the commutation of sentence of death. For example, John did murder and was sentenced to death by a judge. But later, the government decides that instead of killing him, the government will keep him in prison for 20 years due to his good behavior. This is a commutation of his death sentence. But there are some cases where the government can't change the punishment without asking the family of the person who was hurt or killed. If the crime was murder, Section 55, Commutation of Life Imprisonment. Government's humble attitude toward life imprisonment prisoners. When someone is given a sentence of life imprisonment, the provincial government might decide to change that punishment to a shorter time not exceeding 14 years. This is called the commutation of the sentence of imprisonment for life. For example, let's say Sarah was sentenced to her whole life in prison because she committed murder. Later, the provincial government decided that instead of staying in prison forever, Sarah would only be there for a shorter time of 10 years. This is the commutation of her life imprisonment sentence. However, there are some cases where the government can't change the punishment without asking the person who was hurt or their family. From Chapter 16 of the PPC, Section 55A, Saving for President Prerogative, Presidential Pardons, Power to Save Life. The president can forgive someone who has done some offense and is being punished for it. This forgiveness is called a pardon. The president can also delay or reduce the punishment, but the president can only do this with the consent of the person who is hurt or his family, if hurt caused by the offender is mentioned in Chapter 16 of PPC. Imagine someone was punished with death because he committed murder and was going to be punished. The president stepped in and said, "I forgive you, so you don't have to be punished anymore." But first, he would ask the victim's family if the wali agrees. The president can save the person from death punishment. Section 57, Fractions of Terms of Punishment. What does life imprisonment mean? It says that if someone is sentenced to life imprisonment, it's imprisonment for 25 years. Example, let's say someone is given a sentence of half of life imprisonment. Since life imprisonment is equal to 25 years, half of it would be 12.5 years. So, the person would spend 12.5 years in prison. This rule helps for fair calculation of time, that how long someone should be in prison. Section 60, Sentence may be, in certain cases of imprisonment, wholly or partly rigorous or simple. What is rigorous and simple punishment? Sometimes, the punishment can be tough means rigorous imprisonment, and sometimes it can be less strict means simple imprisonment. The court decides the punishment whether it all tough, all simple, or a mix of both. Example, let's say someone was punished under the theft and the court punished him with 3 years of imprisonment. The court decided 6 months for rigorous imprisonment and 2.5 years for simple imprisonment. This rule allows the court to decide the best way to punish someone based on the situation. Section 63, Amount of Fine. Balancing justice. Fines and fairness in legal penalties. When there's no specific amount mentioned for a fine, the fine can be any amount, but it shouldn't be too high. For example, if someone breaks a small parking rule and there's no set fine amount, the penalty he has to pay could be decided by a judge, but it shouldn't be too much. Section 64, Sentence of imprisonment for non-payment of fine. Balancing penalties. When someone is imprisoned for any offense with imprisonment and a fine, or with a fine only, but he can't or won't pay the fine, he might have to go to jail for imprisonment instead of non-payment of the fine. For example, if someone is imprisoned and fined in case of theft, but he can't pay the fine, a court might decide he has to spend extra time in jail for non-payment of the fine. Section 65, Limit to imprisonment for non-payment of fine when imprisonment and fine awardable. Balancing justice. Setting limits on imprisonment for unpaid fines. If someone can't pay a fine and has to go to jail instead, the time he spends in jail shouldn't be more than 1/4 of the maximum jail time for the crime he committed. For example, if someone is jailed for the theft of a motor car, which maximum punishment is 7 years with a fine also, but he can't pay the fine, the time he spends in jail for not paying a fine shouldn't be more than 1/4 of the maximum jail time, means not more than 21 months in jail. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and comment. Follow for more videos. Take care. See you soon.